The goal of today's meeting is to go over and inform the parish where we are in progress in terms of our new sanctuary. So with that, I want to make some introductions here today. Our spiritual directors, I'd like to welcome Father David Ramirez. Could you please stand up? Father David is the director of the Hispanic ministries here in the diocese. He is is very involved with the Hispanic masses, as well as Father Alejandro Godinez. Is he here today? Could you please stand up too? Thank you. If y'all could please make a point to welcome them and tell them hello. And thank you. And of course, not last but not least, but Father Jacob Dio and Deacon Simeon and Deacon Ken are here also. So, Mr. Ken Levinson, did I leave you out? Sorry. And we also have some guests here. We have Arthur Heredia, who is the area consultant with Walsh & Associates, who we have hired to do the feasibility study. Thank you. We also have Gina Emanuel. She's with Centric Architecture. And then, of course, the building committee members. If y'all could all please stand so everybody could see who you are. We have Mark Moshe, Barrett Jones, Sandra Martinez behind me, Desi Johnson, Bill Elliott, Tom Crafton, Ricardo Lainez, Dorian Quezada, Kathy Nichols, and Buddy Meacham, and myself. Okay. I just wanted to say before I go on to the next slide that there's been many other people involved throughout this process that have given their time and volunteered help. I want to thank all of them also. I think everybody has pulled together like St. Luke typically does and has worked together for the better of this community. So, one of the statements that Deacon Ron Deal made back in 2011 when we started this process again was that this was a marathon, not a race. It's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of time, and we need a lot of patience. Things aren't going to happen overnight. And today's meeting is a perfect example of that. This is the point where we're trying to hear back from you and get your input, negative or positive, okay? For the main purpose that when we generate this feasibility study report that Arthur is going to write for us, that when we give it to the diocese, we have a good representation of what the parish wants, what the parish can afford, and what we're willing to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to inform you of what the progress we've made. I'm going to go over a little bit of a history and background as to how we got to where we are today. Then we're going to look at our capital campaign. We're going to look at the cost estimates we got from Carter Group with the plans that we currently have and also our financials from St. Luke's. Then I'm going to go over the drawings. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to see these. They've been set up in the narthex during Mass, after Mass, before Mass. If you have not seen those, by all means, take a chance, if we take a break, to go look at them. I'll also be presenting them up here. So then we'll introduce the feasibility study, and that's where Arthur Heredia will take over, and he'll explain what that process is and what we as parishioners need to do. And then we'll have a questions and answer session. So what I ask everyone is if you please save your questions to the very end. We have a lot of material to cover. There's a 5:30 Mass. We have to be out of here and have all the chairs put up before. So we'll have little pieces of paper and pencils, so if you have questions, you can write those down. If you don't like speaking publicly, we can pass the basket around and we'll collect those questions. We will have a question panel up here to answer and field everyone's questions. So, we started this process way back in 2007. At that time, Father Richard called us together to start thinking about a new sanctuary. Some of y'all may remember that. We've had a lot of changes of faces, but I think there are a lot of people still here that were involved in that. We were asked, Mark Moshe and I were asked to co-chair the building committee meeting. And don't worry, I'm getting to the part where did all the time go. So on January 29th, 2008, we formed the building committee. We determined who those members of the building committee were going to be, and so that time between the fall and September of the fall and January of 2008, we basically, Mark and I were determining what path we needed to go and how we were going to organize the building committee. So once we had the members, we started to discuss our plans and what we wanted to do, and we found out real quickly, well, we didn't know what the diocese wanted us to do. We didn't know what the parishioners wanted us to do. So we had some ideas from the discussions and the meetings that Father Richard had had. And so Mark and I met with Bishop Chobe in September of 2008, and he shared a lot of things with us. He just as an example, he said, I want the tabernacle to be the central focus in the Mass on the altar. He did not like it off to the side, and we agreed with him. He also wanted the choir stationed in the back. He said the focus of the Mass is the sacrifice of the Mass, and that's what people should be focused on during the Mass. But he also didn't want to play down the choir. He thought music is very important to our worship. He wanted them to be within the congregation. So this is why you'll see them in the seat. We've taken out some of the seating and we've put that in there. So we've got a lot of good information. He also told us, and I want to just kind of point this out, he told us he wanted us to build a church for 800 seats, expandable to 1,200. Now that's going to change later on in the presentation, so just hang on with me there. So in December, a lot of y'all may remember Tom Scott. Tom Scott produced a feasibility study that looked at the demographics of the Smyrna area. The bishop asked us to produce this because he wanted to see if it was viable to do a larger church in the Smyrna area. That report that we submitted to the diocese showed that we do have the capacity and we do need to expand. In fact, if y'all recall, when Bishop Chobe said Mass here, he emphasized that possibly not only enlarging this church, but also building another one within he really didn't say where, but I think his thoughts were the Nolensville area, but there's no guarantee there. That's just him talking. I think he mentioned that in the Mass. Then, now you're here to see the blank. We had a recession, and this is where basically nothing happened. I went to Chattanooga and commuted every week to the Volkswagen plant. Some people lost their jobs. A lot of things happened in that time frame. So pretty much the building committee just went on hold. We didn't have meetings. We didn't do anything. Then December of 2011, we resumed our discussions and we started talking about the sanctuary again. We regrouped in October and we started talking seriously about what do we need to do next. And if you recall, we had the bishop come over. We had kind of a discussion. Deacon Ron Deal showed up. The bishop was here. We had them sitting over here. We discussed what the next steps needed to be. Between October and January, we looked at 6 different architects. The building committee reviewed these architects, and we went through a very tedious process of finding out who had the best product for the money, who had the best price. And we didn't necessarily go with the least price. We were trying to find an architect who would respond to the needs of St. Luke's. And that's very important for the design of a church. We sent our recommendation to the bishop, and he authorized us to hire Centric in March. So 2 weeks later, we had a kickoff meeting, and they started working on the design of the job. And then, back up a little here, after we had I don't think I'm not putting my mouth in this enough. After we had done the master plan and the schematic design of the building, we got Carter Group, who donated their services to do estimates for this. This is where this big void we had. We still didn't have a budget at this point. We didn't know what it was going to cost or anything. So we had Centric do the schematic design for the mere purpose of developing that envelope and determining what kind of cost are we looking at. So Carter Group came in and did an estimate, and then we took that estimate. It was high, and we asked them to take a few things off to lower it. We asked them to take the side chapel off. We asked them to reduce the seating to 600. There were several little things, that we asked them to do, and then we got another price. And then we took that price to the bishop. We had an audience with the bishop, and we basically, that's where we are today. We've taken all this information, and now the bishop says we need a feasibility study to see if the parish will support this effort, if they will finance it, if they will support it, and so on and so on. So before we can start a capital fundraising campaign, we have to have that report done that Arthur is going to be speaking on later today. Okay. I know this is probably what you've all been wanting to see. This is the first cost estimate that we got for the plans that you've seen. Now, what this includes is the cost for the sanctuary, which is this $4 million, and that also includes a fee for building the office as well. The existing sanctuary will be repurposed into an office. You have not seen those plans because those took a back seat for now as we started to discuss the plans with the bishop, and we started talking about the funding and the prices of the construction. You will see that there is a $400,000 contingency in this, and then there's a lot of other added things in here that we have to consider, such as furniture, fixtures, and equipment, designer fees, acoustic equipment, acoustic design, and then temporary offices also. There is a builder's risk in there, which basically we may opt not to do if we're managing that construction. So if you recall, we asked the architect to make a look at what a footprint reduction would be if we went to 600 seats instead of 800. Taking the side chapel off and doing some other savings. And you can see that we got it down to 4.8 million from 5.5 to 4.8. Doesn't seem like a lot, but again, you'll notice that we still have the, well, I'm looking for it. I saw it earlier. Yeah, we still have the builder's risk. And I'll just a footnote on the acoustic equipment and the acoustic consultant. I have spoken with someone with our parish who has a lot of experience, works with a company that does a lot of provides a lot of acoustic equipment, and he felt this was high, but we were being conservative. Keep in mind, we have to make sure we've allowed enough to have so that we don't end up short. Okay, here's what I'm looking for. So, Trent rental, one wide, temporary office, we still have that in there, but you'll notice there is no office in this fee. So if we take out some of these things that we were talking about, we've actually been able to reduce it to 4.2 million. If you take out just the contingency, for example, now that contingency basically is to handle mostly changes, and we control changes. There's no reason we should have changes once we get completed with the design, unless we run into unforeseen conditions such as unsuitable soils, where we might have to ship in $50,000 worth of suitable soil for infill. But those are things we won't know until we get to that phase of the project. So right now we have the contingency, and we are leaving it in there because we have to be realistic.